Chapter 3. On his return, she brought Jimmy to my house for dinner. Uncharacteristic of her, as in the past she'd made very sure of her relationships before she made any introductions. No point in stirring up hope where none existed. He arrived in an elderly car. 7 teaspoons was his response to the quantity of sugar required to sweeten his introductory cup of tea. He liked my library, but his interest was taken by the Bible that sits at my front door, challenging a response. He recorded a piece of writing in my notebook, a mixture of philosophical and religious responses to life, to ponder as I sipped on my red wine. I attributed his reference to the slain to his experiences as a soldier, but later I looked them up and learned that it is a term also used to describe those who fall when healed by the power of a religious healer. I didn't ask the intention of the author. He was interested in drawing, and I offered him my drawing tools and showed him how they worked. He was easygoing, relaxed, offering an explanation of who he was. He had been selling roof insulation, and at that very moment the industry had collapsed under a burden of disgrace. He was adamant that his social responsibilities had dictated the way he had conducted business, a victim of government mistakes. Julia's previous boyfriends had been an eclectic mix of tradies and labourers, and she was impressed by his business shirt and his entrepreneurial view of his future. He certainly seemed to be in control. He was obviously smitten with Julia and lamented the fact that he had given his greenstone to the wrong girl, someone from his past. It was a stone that had been dipped into a sacred pond and apparently carried its own magic. He was a big man, a real physical presence in the room, handsome enough, but with a lisp, which sometimes, as I later came to understand, hinted at a slight insecurity. Dark brows, which met in the middle and hid any intent in his eyes. Not the sort of man one would choose to challenge physically, and he came with the reputation of a soldier. She, dark-haired and brown-eyed, was the odd one out in our family. Her father's colouring, a contrast to my Irish heritage. Often mistaken as having an ethnic heritage, I could see her appeal. It was a happy time, and Julia and I were both intrigued. At the end of the evening he retired to bed, nose buried in the book of Revelations, which he read with Julia with glee. He certainly arrived in her life at a moment in which she needed the reassurance of a future and of love. He spoke of archangels with much authority, and one could almost believe in that moment that Julia had found one. There was the question of where he should live, as his business had folded and he was unemployed. Julia's father was in the process of repairing a retaining wall at his home, and so he offered a solution to both problems by providing Jimmy with a bed and employing him to fix the retaining wall.